So good morning and welcome to Delphi Forum, to a very special panel, which looks at how youth can be agents of peace through the testimonials of students of the United World Colleges. And what I told them yesterday when we were preparing this panel is that, in fact, you're leaders of tomorrow. They told me, no, we're leaders of today. So just to introduce a bit, the United World Colleges, they bring together students from all over the world. And there are 18 schools in 15 places, and they were created after the Second World War in order to promote international understanding and peace through the eyes of young people who can look beyond prejudices and approach other communities with an open mind, and therefore become agents of peace. I myself graduated from these colleges 31 years ago, and I was part of an initiative that brought together for the first time a Turkish Cypriot and a Greek Cypriot at the United World College of the Adriatic. Today, the service of the European Commission for which I work funds scholarships for Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots to the United World Colleges. And we have the honor to have with us today both the Director General of DG Reform, Ioannides, but also the headmistress of the United World College of Mostar, Sanıvar. So to help us understand how this experience at the United World Colleges can bridge communities that have come from conflict, backgrounds of conflict, we have the great honor to have with us from one community of Cyprus, Liana Ioannides, who graduated from the United World College of Maastricht in 2023. We have Deren Sanıvar from another community, from Cyprus, who graduated from the United World College of Mostar in 2022. We have Karlo Santic, who is a second-year student at the United World College of Mostar and comes from one community of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we also have Samra Hasic, who is also a second-year student at the United World College of Mostar and comes from a different community of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Before I pass the floor to them, to say something very, very important, the United World Colleges have been nominated twice. The second time was in 2023 for the Nobel Prize. And why this was so will be explained now by these young, talented people, starting from Samra. What makes the United World College experience so special?
For me, it is the exposure to this deliberate diversity, especially for people who come from homogeneous backgrounds like myself. I come from a very, very small town, which is mainly Bosniak populated, and I wasn't exposed to these different perspectives on various topics. UWC pushes us to learn beyond just textbooks. We learn from personal stories of other people in our school. And one personal story that I always remember about UWC is sitting in front of the residents with people from different ethnicities of my own country and sharing our perspective on the war that happened in our country in the 1990s. We started to see that we couldn't even begin to explain who started the war, why did the war happen, because we have this segregated education in our country. We are having divided curriculums for each ethnicity, which limits our ability to see the objective truth, especially for history and the topic of the war in the 1990s. But in that moment, it didn't matter which ethnicity we were. It didn't matter that I was sitting there with one Croat Bosnian and Herzegovinian, one Serb Bosnian and Herzegovinian, and one even Montenegrin. We were all there just smiling and exchanging our perspectives and being open-minded to hear what the other side had to say. And I would say that UWC pushes us to critically think about these different perspectives and also allows us to learn from the city itself and the young people of Mostar who come together, especially in Mostar Rock School, which is a place where students from both sides of the divided town come together to share one mutual language, which is music, and create something so deliberately nice. I would also say that now I choose friends not based on their ethnicity, but on their character. And it doesn't matter these differences, the small differences, don't matter. What matters is that we have the same dreams and same hopes, which is Bosnia and Herzegovina, a prosperous country for all of us.
Thank you. Karlo, how is it special for you?
Well, it's a similar story to Samra's. I mean, the reality, what she said, is that we have 3 different nationalities or 3 different ethnicities in the country that are divided. In reality, they are divisions that are present. And before UWC, I looked at those ethnicities through the prism or through the lenses of most of political elites who represented them or claimed to represent them. And those, and I thought so because I was thinking the logic, oh, they were chosen by the people, that must be what people want, what people think. Those are the values of people. But through UWC Day, which is an annual event in our school, where from all countries that are represented in our school, everyone comes together and represents their own country through food, through some accessories. And the whole city comes to that, to show that togetherness. And we from Bosnia and Herzegovina, all 3 ethnicities, took an initiative and had a shared table where we represented our country as one and sent a message of harmony to everyone in the country. While the world is divided, our country is divided, in reality, we show that we're all together. We live together, we eat together, we talk together, that it is truly possible. And we envision, as Samra said, future Bosnia and Herzegovina as a prosperous country based on mutual respect, trust, and common wish for improvement. The UWC for me, the UWC experience for me is very special because it changed how I see different ethnicities, and it made me realize that what most of political elites might present is not what my generation or young people truly embody toward other ethnicities.
Thank you, Karlo. Deren, you're one of the scholars of the EU-funded scholarships to the United World Colleges. How did that experience change your perspective vis-a-vis the other community or other communities in Cyprus?
Okay, so yes, it definitely added a new sense of element to how I start viewing the problem, or not even a problem, the situation at hand. Initially, because of my searching from a young age, I was quite acquainted with these like peace-building processes and these activities and projects for the youth on the island. So when I showed up to UWC Mostar with my Greek-speaking Cypriot counterparts, it was not of any revelation, but when we sat down to have these like intimate and cozy conversations, it really did add like this tenfold dimension to how I started viewing the quote-unquote other side. However, through UWC Cyprus, I met this friend, who graduated from the same school as Ioannides from UWC Adriatic in Italy, but not 31 years ago, last year.
Yes, thank you.
and when I asked her, like, where are you from, or what ethnicity do you identify with, she said, Maronite Cypriot. And that, I had to stop, and it was like a what moment for me, because growing up, we're all like taught, and either via school or like parents or the elderly, about the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots. So a lot of the communities go like unnoticed, and I was blind to it myself. And eventually I became friends with her, and over the past summer, I got the chance to like work with her on some projects, and through collaboration, I got to learn so much more about the wider native communities on Cyprus. And like herself, Maronite Cypriots, there are Romani Cypriots, Armenian Cypriots, and so forth, and these communities are all overlooked. But the thing is, they all come with their own unique language and culture that is just like not of necessarily any relevance to the Greek Cypriots or the Turkish Cypriots. To kind of wrap up my train of thoughts, what I'm trying to emphasize is that even as someone on the peace-building scene, I was oblivious to this, but having been to UWC and having been given these tools and the equipment to critically engage with new other people, I was able to approach the situation with like the required sincerity and sensitivity. And again, I think now, how I think of it is, when I have these conversations, I try to bring their stories into light so that I can remind all of us to start thinking about how their voices could possibly be relevant when we start thinking about these peace-building processes in Cyprus, when we start speaking about integration of Cyprus even in the future, on Cyprus's journey back to being whole. So, yeah.
Thank you, Deren. Karlo, how is it special for you?
Okay, so
Thank you. Liana, you also are a scholar, an EU scholar at the United World Colleges, and how did that experience affect the way you see other communities and what to do today? Because I think you have an interesting story to tell.
Thank you. I think my experience was a bit different to Deren's in that before UWC, I was not at all engaged in peace building, and I would say quite the opposite. I grew up in a family of refugees from Morphu, and I remember being taught and feeling the intergenerational pain and trauma that still exists in our communities because of the conflict. And I remember in primary school being really taught to feel this communal sense of injustice and to feel that I have been wronged personally, and that to some extent to channel that pain and feeling of injustice into a feeling of resentment and hate towards the other community. So I remember, for example, walking through my city, Nicosia, which is also the last divided capital of Europe, and seeing writings on the wall, graffitis. For example, Turkos nekros monon galos, which translates to a good Turk is only a dead Turk. And seeing such heavy graffiti on the wall, and in a way seeing them being completely tolerated by my community, to some extent I also grew tolerant of this, and to some extent tolerant of how much hate and absorbing it. So going into UWC for the first time, sitting on a table during Ramadan with my Muslim friends, and just sharing a meal. And at the moment, of course, you're not thinking, oh my God, I'm sharing a meal with a Buddhist, an atheist, a Christian, a Jew. You're just sitting on a table and having fun with your friends. A key word that Deren mentioned was the word conversation. And I think through conversation, we can break these these hateful barriers that we don't even realize exist, and we don't realize how harmful they are to ourselves. What Samra mentioned in the beginning, objective truth, what I realized is that perception becomes truth, unfortunately. And I realized that I was taught a truth that was not truthful and was not truthful to the peaceful future that I would like to build.
Thank you. The two of you, so Karlo and Samra, you're studying now at the college in Mostar, which is known for its bridge and the division of that city. How that experience, you touched on it before, but can you elaborate on how that experience in that divided city has changed the perspective in which you see other communities within your country? We start with Samra.
Definitely. I think it's important to understand, as Liana said, the generational trauma that we are all experiencing, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in this post-war country. Coming to Mostar, I realized that I was very limited to this one perspective of every topic regarding Bosnia and Herzegovina. And coming to Mostar in this divided city, I realized that there is always going to be more sides to every story. I've started to realize that how much scared I was to ask difficult questions, the questions that I didn't know, the taboo questions about war, how it started, and everything that I was interested in. And I remember being very young, maybe 5 or 6 years old, going to Republika Srpska, a region mostly populated by Bosnian Serbs, and being confused as to why my dad asked me to call him Tata instead of Baba, which both words essentially mean father. However, one sort of reveals my identity to everyone listening and puts me potentially in danger. And I didn't understand as to why in my own country I should be afraid to say something. And I didn't ask questions, and I was pushed coming to UWC Mostar to ask these questions. And I would say that the biggest push was given to me by international students of the United World College, because they started asking me questions to which I didn't have the answers to. And I realized that I need to start asking myself, start critically thinking, start being unafraid of open conversation, open dialogue, open-mindedness, and understanding, because that is exactly what comes from these talks with people from other ethnicities and doing further research and stepping away from this one perspective sort of point of view. And I would say that this is the only way in which we all, the three different ethnicities in Bosnia and Herzegovina, can come together and not only learn from each other, but love each other.
Thank you. Karlo?
Yeah, I would just a bit add to what Samra said, because I also come from an area which is mostly it is homogeneous, but it's mostly Croat area, Croat populated. And to say that we're very similar, but we share our own differences. However, in my area, there is a still living memory of the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina that happened in the 90s and still lives in many people. And this memory is so important for people as they live through it, live through horrors of it, and it's different. It is difficult to move past it, which is understandable. And through me growing up, it was instilled into me certain hesitancy or certain caution to trust other ethnicities or to cooperate with them. Now, when I came to UWC and when I talked to one of my friends who is a Bosniak, who lives in a mostly Bosniak area, I asked him one of the difficult questions about perception of other ethnicities in his area. And he said one sentence that just stuck with me: some people still live like the war never ended. And it took me by surprise. I had to think about it, and I realized that we're just all being taught not to cooperate and to live like the difference between us is something normal, the division between us is something normal, and we all have to behave like strangers to each other. But it opened my eyes that problem in the end is the ones who create that sentiment of division. And I realized the youth can be the drivers of a positive change in our country, but only if we unlearn the prejudices of the previous generations.
Thank you, Karlo. And before I go to the next question, I'll share an experience of my own, because I like listening to you, sharing your experiences. I mentioned it yesterday when we were preparing this with the guys. So in the Adriatic, we have these national days where they group students and they perform, so they present spectacles from their areas, depending on how they are grouped, food, etc. So you had the German-Austrian, you had the Asian, you had, and of course you had the Mediterranean. And in the Mediterranean you had Greeks, Turks, Turkish Cypriot, Greek Cypriot, Palestinian, Israeli. Needless to say, the most disorganized, the most chaotic of all national days. And that made us realize actually we share the same thing. Our backdrop was the eye, we all had the eye, but it was so funny to see how we were all very similar in our chaotic approach to life. Very creative though. So through your presentation so far, I think you've made all a very solid case of how and why you can be agents of peace through this experience you've had. But I want to pass the floor once again back to you to defend this title of this panel, why you are today agents for peace. So we start from you, Liana.
Yes, in the Cyprus situation, unfortunately, it has been 7 years since 2017 that there has been no progress in the Cyprus negotiation, the peace process. And we see that time is flying. This year, Deren and I will be voting for the first time in the European elections. I was 11 years old during the Crans-Montana negotiations in 2017, and now we're voting for the first time. Had there been a solution then, we would have been voting in a united and federal Cyprus. Instead, we're voting in a divided Cyprus, where we see that most youth feel that there's no prospect for a peaceful future. And to take a moment to realize how sad this is, that youth, who are the beacon of hope, are the ones who feel the least hope. As youth delegate of Cyprus to the Council of Europe, last week I had the opportunity to intervene during the plenary sessions of the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities and mentioned the need for youth to be included in the peace-building processes that define our future. And the response of the Commissioner for Human Rights of the Council of Europe was that what we often see is that young people in Cyprus show more courage and more clear vision of what we want for a future than the people in power. How tragic is that, when we should be the ones to be enjoying life and living freely? Instead, we are the ones who are worrying about our future. Yesterday, during the panel on the Cyprus peace process, Mr. Mario Nava mentioned the letter that Cypriot Youth wrote to the European Commission. The Cypriot Youth that wrote this letter were EU scholars from the program that Ioannis mentioned. And in this letter, we thanked the European Commission for the efforts and the commitment to building a united Cyprus, including the scholarship program. And we also voiced our determination for a common and peaceful future. And as well as that, we voiced our thought that we have to be part of the process to build this future. As youth, for us to write this letter together at a time when the leaders cannot even agree on what kind of solution they want, it was thanks to our UWC education, the tools that we were given. But unfortunately, as I mentioned in my previous answer, the reality is that most youth are not like us. They feel lost, they feel hopeless, and they feel that they have no role and no voice. So they feel even if they get involved, no one is going to care. Our role as agents of peace is not only that we ourselves are transformed, and the power of the UWC experience, and why I think it was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, is not that it takes individuals and empowers them, but rather that it gives individuals the tools, the knowledge, the education, and the courage to be the ones to be multipliers of change, to be the ones to reach to more youth within our communities. UWC graduates and UWC students are deeply rooted within our community, and we're able to reach more youth because we know the struggles, but we also know how we can build a better future. I would like to mention a sentence that we wrote in the letter to the European Commission, and we wrote that we sincerely promise not only to walk through the road that you have guided us through the scholarships, but also to take the baton and try to make it to our shared goal, a peaceful and united Cyprus. So as we look ahead, I really think that in our peace process and also in our everyday life, we have to be the ones to uproot youth, and thanks to our tools, we also have a responsibility and a duty to be the ones to show other youth that yes, we can get involved, and yes, we matter in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Liana. Samra, the same to you. Whatever comes to your mind, if you want to say something, because we have some more time, so.
I would say, for Bosnia and Herzegovina and UWC Mostar's message, it is so very important to be open for change and to use our education to build bridges between people and the divisions between people, I would say.
Thank you, Karlo. A last message from you.
Yeah, I like what Samra said. For me, it's also, the people in Bosnia and Herzegovina also have to be open to mutual understanding of each other's perspectives, since 3 different curriculums in one country is truly a lot. And it only drives that division further. And that lack of understanding of what others are going through, what others have experienced, what others are being taught, it truly does show how it is only possible, but only if we understand each other and talk to each other about these difficult topics. And I think as youth, we have that, in a sense, duty to be those who are going to initiate those conversations in order to resolve issues that are so deep-rooted in our communities.
Thank you. And Deren, we give the final word to you.
Okay, so I think first I want to echo off of what you said, Lian, because this is a conversation we had earlier, even before coming to Delphi, on how, yes, I think I can't stress enough that we do not necessarily represent the youth of Cyprus, right? I think it's my biggest fear that we lose relatability. It is my biggest fear that we lose touch with our peers in Cyprus, because not everyone comes from the same sense of privilege or can find the same opportunity to get to the same skills, same equipment, or like whatever it is that makes us be able to like be on this platform right now. So for that reason, there are examples I'll give in a bit about how we are defeating this sense of relatability, or the lack of it, therefore. UWC, I want to move back to what I want to say, is that UWC, to simply put, to emphasize, is like a sense of microcosm of the world that we live in. So the globe condensed and represented through a student body, right? But a student body, so a globe of youth, just youth. And that gives a sense of like complete new lens to how you view the world. So when we're there, and when you're able to hear through like other youth from different parts of the world, the global crises that we face, and you see through them how we have dreams for a world we live in, is slowly being yanked out of the grasp of our palms, it awakes a sense of urgency. It becomes a driving force, because when it lights this hot flame of fire under our feet, it becomes a driver for us to foster peace wherever we go. So in that sense, maybe how we are managing to gap this lack of relatability is that in Cyprus, right now, and a good example, very simply put again, in the peace-building scene, and relating back to my previous answer about minority communities, when approaching this bi-communally contextualized scene, we start shifting language, and we start saying and adopting terminology like intercommunal and multi-communal to be inclusive of all of us. Because at the end of the day, it is not just Greek-speaking Cypriots or Turkish-speaking Cypriots, in major, possibly. So now, in my story, and for me, how I identify, when I'm approached and somebody asks me, where are you from? Who are you? What is your ethnicity? I choose to say that I'm a Turkish-speaking Cypriot rather than just saying that I'm a Turkish Cypriot. And the distinction comes from a very clear mindset. And this is a sentiment that is common amongst Cypriot youth at UWC, because we understand that to move towards peace in Cyprus, we have to fundamentally acknowledge that we are first all Cypriots, right? We are for Cyprus and for one Cyprus. Yeah.
Thank you. I think in this half an hour we spent together on this stage, you have made some very powerful messages, and you have explained very clearly what the United World College experience is, how it can impact young people like you. We have all seen how brilliant you are, and why we have named you Agents of Peace. It is no surprise that the United World Colleges have been nominated twice for the Nobel Prize. It is no surprise that they're collaborating with the EU, with the European Commission, which has won the Nobel Prize, because they were both created after the Second World War to promote peace and understanding among people. Mm-hmm. I think, to me, it has been a great honor to share this stage with you. Proud and moved, because I see a much better version of my generation of United World Colleges, people on this stage. I would like to wish you, on behalf of all of us, I think, all the best. Best of luck for the ones who are taking exams soon. And I want to express a certainty that you will be back in Delphi as world leaders, explaining how you're contributing to world peace. Thank you very much.